Libra has felt this for a very long time, in a way that never needed a name. It didn't arrive as a clear thought. It didn't show up as a logical conclusion. It slipped in quietly, like the last warmth left in a room just after the lights go out. You walk in, and you know something has changed, even though everything still looks the same. Your intuition whispers softly, but it doesn't stop, like an old clock on the wall, ticking steadily in moments when you thought you were finally at peace. There are days when you notice words no longer match actions. Promises still sound complete, still sound right, but they fall to the ground without leaving any trace behind. Gestures that should have felt warm now leave a heaviness in your chest, as if a thin layer of fog has settled over every interaction. And then there is the silence. Not the kind that feels calm or safe, but the kind that tightens your chest just a little. The kind that makes you feel as if you're standing in front of a door left slightly open, knowing something behind it has not been spoken yet. More than once, Libra has wondered if maybe you were thinking too much. You are someone who listens, someone who considers, someone who tries to see things from every angle. You tell yourself that everyone gets tired sometimes, that maybe you should be more understanding, more patient, more gentle. You've grown used to adjusting yourself to keep the peace, to make sure nothing gets shaken. But the more you try to reassure yourself, the clearer it becomes that this feeling doesn't go away. It stays, quiet, persistent, like a small flame that never flares up, but never goes out either. There are ordinary moments, nothing dramatic, that suddenly become turning points. A glance that passes too quickly, a reply that comes just a little too late, a small detail that doesn't quite fit with the story you were told. They're not big enough to make you stand up and name the problem, but they're enough to make your soul lean gently toward the truth. You begin to notice your body reacting before your mind has time to analyze. A heartbeat out of rhythm, a breath deeper than necessary, a quiet unease with no clear explanation. Libra is always searching for balance, but you're also deeply sensitive to when something is out of tune. When things lose their harmony, you feel it the way a musician hears a wrong note in an otherwise beautiful composition. Others might not hear it, but you do. And you tried to ignore it because you understand that truth can carry responsibility, decisions, and sometimes pain. But truth is also like morning light. You can keep your eyes closed a little longer, but it's still there, waiting for you to open them. Perhaps the most important lesson you're learning right now is learning to trust what you feel, not to rush to conclusions, but to respect the voice within. Your soul recognized something before your mind could gather the evidence. That doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're suspicious. It simply means you're waking up in your own way, quietly, slowly. And once it begins, there is no turning back. When you allow yourself to pause, to listen more deeply, you realize this feeling didn't come to scare you. It came to remind you that you deserve clarity, you deserve honesty, you deserve a life where words and actions can stand side by side without hiding. And in that listening, something inside you begins to shift, almost imperceptibly, like moonlight reflected on water when the wind barely touches the surface. You don't need to do anything yet. Just stay there, feel it, and let the story open itself in its own time. And then, in that quiet space, a presence slowly becomes clearer, not through noise, not through a dramatic event, but through details so small you once overlooked them. There is someone very close to you, close enough that you know their breathing, the rhythm of their voice, the calm expression they always lead with. They appear at just the right moments, with words that sound reasonable, carefully balanced, measured in a way that never offends. Being around them, you once felt you should soften yourself, yield a little more, be more understanding. But over time, you begin to notice that some stories are told from only one direction. What doesn't benefit them is passed over quickly. What does is emphasized with an almost unnatural calm. You don't catch this all at once. It builds slowly, like fine grains of sand, falling day after day, until one day your heart feels heavier than usual. There are moments when you ask yourself why, after every conversation, you're the one thinking more, rechecking yourself more, wondering if you're being too sensitive. They're used to you trusting, used to you choosing harmony over questions, used to you stepping back so nothing gets disrupted. And in that pattern, you once allowed yourself to doubt your own feelings. But now, something no longer moves as smoothly as before. A glance that turns away too quickly. A reply that comes later than it should. A detail that doesn't match what was said before. Those small pieces begin to find each other, without you arranging them. Libra feels the shift in the air clearly now. No longer vague, no longer distant, but specific, solid enough that you can't turn away. Your body reacts before your mind steps in. A brief drop in your chest, like hearing a familiar sound played slightly off rhythm. Sometimes you find yourself silent longer than usual, not because you have nothing to say, but because you're watching. And when you watch, things begin to reveal themselves. Words that seem harmless carry direction. Gestures wrapped in care lack true empathy. You realize that calm is not always peace. Sometimes it's a carefully held surface designed to keep things moving exactly as someone wants them to. What's surprising is that when these signs appear, you don't feel panic. Instead, there is a deep, quiet clarity, as if something inside you has turned on a small light, just bright enough to see the path directly in front of you. You don't need to name who they are. You don't need to rush toward judgment. You only need to recognize that what you're seeing is real, and that your intuition has never betrayed you. That clarity carries both sadness and relief. Sadness, because you understand some things were never built on honesty. Relief, because you no longer have to wonder whether you imagined it all. And in that moment, when you allow truth to exist quietly, the story begins to turn, not loudly, not urgently, just a slow current carrying you forward into a place where light has already begun to enter, little by little, enough to illuminate what has been hidden for far too long. Not loud, not rushed, just a slow current carrying you forward into a place where light has already begun to slip in, little by little, enough to reveal what has been sitting in the dark for far too long. And when that light finally touches it, you realize what you're facing is not just a few untrue words, not just a passing moment of disappointment. It runs deeper than that, quieter than that, and it's been there far longer than you ever imagined. You begin to understand why you felt tired for so long without knowing exactly why. Why there are mornings you wake up feeling as if you've just finished a long conversation in your sleep, even though nothing unusual happened the night before. What you've been carrying didn't come from one single shock. It came from repetition. Small moments, replayed again and again, subtle enough that you could never point to one clear cause. Your emotions were being guided, bent slightly out of shape, placed into patterns you didn't recognize at the beginning. There were times you wondered if maybe you were feeling things wrong. Your intuition spoke, but you softened your own voice in response, telling yourself that maybe you should let it go, that maybe you should understand the situation, that keeping the peace mattered more. You stayed quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because you believed calm was the highest priority. You grew used to placing your feelings just a little lower, making room for harmony, for the sense that everything was still okay. And slowly, you were led to the most dangerous thought of all. That maybe the problem was you. Manipulation doesn't always arrive in obvious forms. It doesn't need harsh accusations or extreme behavior. Sometimes, it's simply the repetition of making you doubt yourself. A sentence wrapped in concern, just sharp enough to make you question your own reaction. A slight shake of the head, subtle enough to make you adjust your emotions to fit someone else's expectations. And you became very good at that, Libra. You adjusted, you softened, you managed emotions that kept piling up without realizing how much of yourself was being worn down piece by piece. Then comes the moment when you realize this story was never just about two people. There may have been someone who knew, who saw it clearly and chose silence. Or someone who casually mentioned a very small detail, not enough to be proof, but enough to bring the whole picture into focus. Those pieces didn't appear to hurt you more. They appeared to show you that your feelings were never without reason. Everything unfolded in silence for so long that when the truth finally began to surface, it didn't shock you. It arrived carrying a deep, quiet sadness instead. What hurt the most was never the truth itself. Truth, even when sharp, can be accepted. What hurt was realizing someone chose to hide it, chose to guide the story in a way that made you doubt yourself. There are moments when you look back and wonder why you didn't listen to that first feeling, and then you understand. At the time, you were simply trying to love, trying to protect, in the best way you knew how. As this awareness settles, you feel a strange kind of emptiness. Not the devastation of loss, but the emptiness that comes from releasing an old belief. Inside that space, there is sadness, but there is also relief. As if you finally set down a weight you carried for so long, you forgot what it felt like to walk without it. You begin to see more clearly the value of honesty, not just from others, but from yourself, toward yourself. And in that quiet moment, something inside you begins to rise, slowly, steadily, standing upright again, ready for the clarity you have always deserved. And when that strength finally stands upright inside you, you realize a truth so gentle you once didn't allow yourself to believe it. That there are moments in life when you don't need to do anything at all. No explaining, no proving, no uncovering, no confrontation. Just being fully present with what is happening and allowing everything to reveal itself in the most natural way. Libra is used to holding the balance for everyone, but this time you are being invited to set the scale down for a moment and let the universe handle the rest. You may have believed that if you didn't speak up, if you didn't ask for clarity, the truth would stay buried forever. But life has its own rhythm, and truth does too. It doesn't need to be dragged out of the dark through force or tension. It finds its way to the light on its own, like a seed breaking through heavy soil, quiet, unimpressive, relentless. You begin to notice it through details that seem unrelated. A careless word slipping out in a harmless conversation. A message sent to the wrong person at the wrong time. A small fragment shared out of place, out of context, yet perfectly aligned with what you felt all along. Those moments don't arrive to confuse you. They arrive to confirm something important, that you were never imagining it, that your intuition has been working patiently, faithfully, even when you pushed it aside to keep the peace. The universe doesn't rush, but it doesn't miss anything either. It allows people to make mistakes in very human ways, because within those mistakes, what is no longer stable collapses on its own. You don't need to be the one who pushes. You don't need to be the one who points. You only need to stand there, breathe evenly, and watch the truth take its own shape. A quiet relief settles in when you realize you no longer have to tense yourself. You don't have to calculate the perfect words. You don't have to perform the perfect response. Everything begins to return to its rightful place. Stories that were once directed now reveal their gaps. Roles that were held tightly begin to show cracks. And you, in this new calm, are no longer standing at the center of the storm. You become the observer with an open heart, but no longer willing to hurt yourself to preserve a false sense of peace. The most beautiful part of this phase is not proving who was right or wrong. The beauty lies in realizing you don't need to fight to be validated. Truth doesn't need a loud voice, and neither do you. Your worth is not measured by how much you endure or how quietly you sacrifice. It lives in knowing when to stop, when to listen, and when to let things expose themselves naturally. Some lessons in life only arrive when we stop trying to control the outcome. And in that very human release, you feel a new current moving through you. Lighter, brighter, yet more honest than ever. What doesn't belong to you begins to leave without loud goodbyes. What needs to be seen steps into the light on its own. You haven't lost anything important. You've simply stopped holding on to what no longer fits the rhythm of your inner life. There is a deep sense of safety here, like realizing you're allowed to trust life again, allowed to believe that justice doesn't always arrive with noise, but sometimes comes through a silence so precise it can't be ignored. As you continue walking with this quiet steadiness, something in the air begins to change. The connections around you start to vibrate differently. Not everyone stays, and that no longer frightens you. Not everyone disappears, and that no longer makes you doubt yourself. You begin to recognize what true presence feels like. what honesty without disguise feels like. And in that recognition, you keep moving forward, not forcefully, not fearfully, but grounded, aware, and finally at ease with the truth you now carry. And in that gentle light, you begin to understand that you're being guided toward a place where clarity and peace are no longer in conflict, but walking side by side, quietly, steadily, like the even rhythm of your own breath. From that moment on, something deeply important begins to shift inside Libra, not as a dramatic turn, not as a sudden breakthrough, but as a slow, grounded awakening, the way the sun rises without making a sound. You begin to trust your intuition again, no longer as a fragile belief, no longer as a voice pushed to the end of the line. This time, your intuition is invited to sit at the center, to be listened to fully, without interruption. You realize that all these years, it never left you. You were the one who learned to ignore it, afraid of hurting someone, afraid of making things complicated. Now, you allow yourself to believe that what you feel has value, that the sensation in your chest is not weakness, but emotional intelligence shaped by time. With that trust, boundaries begin to form. Not cold walls, but clear lines, gentle yet firm. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to justify how you feel. You simply know when to pause, when to say no, when to take a step back to protect your inner peace. Those boundaries don't create distance. They make you more honest with yourself and with others. There is something profound that Libra comes to understand during this time. That calm achieved by swallowing the truth is not peace. It is only a delay of chaos. You once tried to keep everything smooth. You believed silence was the safest way to avoid collapse. But now, looking back, you see that silence made you carry more than you ever needed to. When you begin to live in alignment with what you feel, even if it feels unsteady at first, you become lighter. Another subtle change takes place. You stop focusing so much on words, not because words don't matter, but because you've learned to look deeper. You read the energy behind what's said. You feel sincerity or avoidance in the spaces between. You notice that some people speak beautifully yet feel empty, and others say very little, but their presence feels safe. This awareness doesn't come from suspicion. It comes from clarity. Standing in that clarity, you no longer feel small. You no longer feel the need to ask permission to exist. Your power returns in a very quiet way, not loud, not performative, but steady, like roots anchored deep in the ground. You don't need to prove you're right. You don't need to make anyone wrong. You only need to be yourself, fully, clearly, honestly. And strangely enough, when you stop trying to hold everything in balance, life begins to adjust itself in a more harmonious way. There are moments when you look around and realize not every relationship needs to be carried forward. This no longer hurts the way it used to. You understand now that sometimes leaving is a form of respect for both sides. You also see that what remains after truth and boundaries have done their work is far more precious. These connections don't need endless promises. They only need real presence. And in this new rhythm of living, you recognize something more clearly than ever before. You are no longer lost inside your own life. Each step is supported from within. By intuition, you trust. By boundaries you've set. By truth, you now honor. You move forward slowly, but with certainty, carrying a deep sense of freedom, the kind that comes when you're finally walking in alignment with yourself. A feeling that you no longer have to trade pieces of yourself just to keep the peace. Because for the first time in a long while, truth and calm are standing on the same side, moving together quietly, guiding you forward. And as you walk in that state, the world around you begins to respond in a very different way. Not through clear announcements, not through dramatic explanations, but through small, subtle shifts. Just enough for you to notice that a natural process of sorting is taking place. You begin to see that some people slowly step back without explanation. They aren't angry. They don't make noise. They simply fade out of your rhythm, like dry leaves falling after the season has already changed. In the past, their leaving might have unsettled you. made you wonder what you did wrong. But now, you stand still and observe, with a calm you haven't felt before. You understand that not every departure is a loss. Some spaces need to be created so your inner world can breathe. There are also those who remain, but in a different way. They become more polite, more careful with their words, more measured in their gestures. The familiarity that once felt close is replaced by a thin layer of distance, just enough for you to sense caution. Eyes that no longer meet yours the same way. Conversations that end a little sooner than before. There is no hostility in these changes, but they speak volumes. You realize that when you stop doubting yourself, when you stop reshaping yourself to make others comfortable, some relationships can no longer stand where they once did. What surprises you is that you no longer feel the need to hold on or explain. You don't ask why someone pulls away. You don't try to bring them back. Because at a deeper level, you understand that real connection doesn't require effort to survive. Relationships built on sincerity adjust naturally to your new boundaries, and those that existed because of your silence and self-sacrifice begin to fade on their own. There are moments when you sit alone, looking back at the people who once felt so familiar, and you realize that the emptiness you first felt has been replaced by relief. You no longer have to guess intentions. You no longer weigh every word to avoid upsetting someone. The space around you grows quieter, but it is a gentle quiet, like early morning before the city wakes. And in that stillness, you hear your own voice more clearly. Then, amid the departures and the changes, you begin to notice who remains naturally. They don't need to speak much. They don't need to prove anything. Their presence feels steady, as if your breath slows down when they are near. These connections are not loud, not dramatic, but they run deep enough to make you feel seen and respected. You come to understand that the quality of connection matters far more than the number of people around you. This process of sorting does not arrive to make you lonely. It arrives to help you live more truthfully. It teaches you that you don't need to keep everyone to prove your worth. Your value is not measured by how many people surround you, but by how fully you can be yourself in their presence. And as you allow life to adjust itself to this new rhythm, you feel a deep alignment between your inner world and the one around you. You begin to move more gently in relationships, not out of fear of loss, but because you finally understand what you need. Each meeting, each conversation, now carries clearer meaning. You no longer seek acceptance by shrinking yourself. Instead, you allow your truth to be present and let life decide who can walk beside you on this path. And in that quiet selection, you realize you have not been left behind. You are being guided toward the connections that reflect who you truly are. Places where you don't have to fold yourself smaller. Places where you can stand upright, breathe deeply, and continue forward with a calm, steady knowing that you are exactly where you are meant to be. And as you move through this simplified rhythm of life, something becomes quietly, unmistakably clear. What once collapsed did not carry the cruelty you feared. It didn't come to take anything precious away. It came to return something that had been hidden for far too long. Clarity. Like an old house having its weak walls gently removed, natural light begins to pour in ways you had never seen before. Your inner space feels wider, more open, and you begin to see life through a different lens. Calm, but unmistakably clear. You realize you're entering a new phase without needing to give it a dramatic name. Things simply feel cleaner now. The circle around you is no longer crowded, but every presence feels intentional, like it belongs exactly where it is. You're no longer pulled into emotional swings that rise and fall without warning, no longer guessing intentions, no longer decoding mixed signals. Life becomes quieter, but it also becomes deeper, more solid, like a still lake reflecting the sky, honestly, without distortion. There are days you notice you smile less than before, but when you do, it comes from a place that is real. You no longer need dramatic stories to feel alive. You find joy in simple things: a quiet morning, a conversation without defense, a moment of being yourself without adjusting to fit anyone else. Fewer people, but the right ones. Less turbulence, but each moment carries its own weight. truth becomes the new standard for what you allow into your life. You're no longer drawn to promises that sound beautiful, but have no foundation. Instead, you recognize the value of consistency, of small actions repeated with intention. You begin to understand that real safety doesn't come from life always going smoothly. It comes from knowing you can remain standing no matter how circumstances change. And within that understanding, you feel yourself maturing in a very quiet way. A new opportunity may appear, not loudly, not with spectacle. It comes from a place where you don't need to hide any part of who you are. It may be a new connection, one that begins with ease, with comfort. No need to prove anything. No need to impress. You don't have to try to be perfect. Your presence alone is already enough. These moments don't arrive as rewards. They arrive as natural results of choosing truth, of releasing what no longer fits. When you look back now, you don't feel the same regret you once did. What left no longer feels like loss. It feels like learning. You understand that every release was an act of self-respect, and that respect radiates outward, drawing in experiences that reflect who you are becoming. You no longer run on someone else's rhythm. Your own rhythm is steady enough to guide you forward. In this new space, you allow yourself to slow down, to feel more deeply. You don't rush to fill the empty spaces, because you know those quiet gaps are what nourish creativity and peace. You begin to see the value of discernment, not only in relationships, but in how you spend your time, your energy, your attention. Each choice becomes more conscious. And because of that, life feels lighter. And as you continue walking with this clarity, a warm sense begins to spread through you, a feeling that you are no longer pulled backward by the past, nor pushed forward by the future. You are exactly where you need to be, at exactly this moment, with enough light to see the road ahead. Not a path without challenges, but a path where you are no longer walking alone in confusion. You carry clarity like a small lamp in your hand, enough to illuminate each step, enough to remind you that every ending opens into a beginning that is gentler, truer, and more aligned with who you have become. And when you remain in that light long enough, you begin to understand something simple, yet deeply profound. Truth never arrived to break you. It never carried the intention to punish. It never came to erase what you tried so hard to protect. Truth arrives like a gentle call, inviting you back to who you truly are. Back to the feelings you once set aside. Back to the inner voice you learned to place last. It doesn't ask you to be stronger than anyone else. It only asks you to be more honest with yourself. When Libra finally sees clearly, you are no longer easily guided by polished words or carefully wrapped promises. Not because you've become closed off, not because you've grown suspicious, but because you've learned to trust alignment between words and actions. You no longer allow others to decide how you feel. You no longer let silence or someone else's gaze make you question your worth. There is a quiet steadiness inside you now, like the ground beneath your feet. It doesn't need proof to exist. You also realize that you haven't lost anything truly important along this journey. What left your life had already expired. It once mattered. It once served a purpose, but it no longer fit the person you are becoming. Letting go is not failure. It is an act of courage, because it requires believing that you deserve something better, clearer, fairer. And when you believe that, life begins to respond with experiences that match it. There may be moments when you look back with a trace of tenderness, a quiet ache. That's human. That's real. But that ache no longer holds you in place. It transforms into understanding. It softens you toward yourself and toward others. You recognize that everyone is doing the best they can within their level of awareness, and you allow yourself to stop carrying their limitations for them. Everyone walks their own path, and yours has grown brighter because you chose to walk in truth. The peace you feel now does not come from perfection. It comes from no longer splitting yourself to fit into the world around you. You breathe more deeply. You speak more slowly. You live more honestly. You rest when you need to. You move forward when you're ready. Each day is no longer a test to prove your value. It becomes an opportunity to be fully present. And that presence brings a quiet sense of wholeness. As you continue walking on this new level of living, you begin to see that fairness doesn't always arrive in the form you once expected, but it always arrives on time. Light doesn't always shine brightly, but it shines enough so you no longer walk in confusion. Peace doesn't mean the absence of storms. It means knowing you can remain standing as storms pass through. You've learned to place trust in yourself, and that trust is the strongest foundation for whatever lies ahead. And then, in the most ordinary moments, you find yourself smiling for no reason at all. A gentle smile, born from quiet gratitude. Grateful that you listened to your intuition. Grateful that you were brave enough to release what no longer fit. Grateful that you didn't turn away from truth, even when it asked you to face uncomfortable emotions. All of it has brought you exactly where you belong. And in this place, you no longer have to strain to hold your balance. You stand upright, steady, with an open heart and clear eyes. You know who you are. You know what you need. You know what you deserve. Life will continue to move. Change will continue to arrive, but you are no longer afraid of it. Because from here on, every step you take is guided by truth, supported by peace, and illuminated by who you truly are.